Well, I went here once before because I was invited by my dear great friend Gabrielem Chmurą. So that's how this connection that I do have now, this I hope of frequent of coming here. It depends on him. We knew each other since a long time, and when I was a principal conductor in Nice, both of the opera and of the symphonic orchestra, he came and conducted my orchestra several times, and we became good friends. And that's why, first of all, I came here, and so there is some kind of as well sentimental thing about it. So it's a great pleasure, not only because Poland is a wonderful country of musical tradition, but because of this personal connection. It's a beginning in a certain way, because when I came for Carmen, it was a revival, so it was rather short, and we stayed together, we worked a couple of weeks together when I came here. Now it's a completely different experience, because I have some time to develop an acquaintance, and I can see what kind of artists I do have in front of me, both in the orchestra and with the group of soloists that they are part of this magnificent opera house. So it's I hope it's not going to be one of those experiences where I'll be here once and then because that's how one develops a greater, wider way of communicating. So I started this way, that is trying to know them a little in a more profound way than might happen when you're simply called for a concert and then you go elsewhere. So that's my approach to this, and it's an extremely interesting discovery, because, for instance, in the orchestra, there are obviously several generations inside the orchestra, which is very exciting, because it's a mixture of both of experience and of energy, because of the combination of all these qualities of both experience, knowledge, and enthusiasm could be fantastic. Because of the COVID limitations, we had to decide a certain size of orchestra. So I thought I wanted, as a first contact, to work with the soloists as well, with the voices of the theater. So I thought that Mozart would have been a very good start, and so I choose a selection of some of the most popular and interesting parts of Nozze di Figaro, and then the Mendelssohn, the fourth symphony of Mendelssohn, who is surnamed Italiana, because it was written after a journey that Mendelssohn made in Italy, which was a typical adventure of the artists in those years. That is, the visiting Italy and the monuments, the culture, was part of a sort of a romantic journey somehow, but a journey of knowledge. So Mendelssohn comes and remains fascinated by the Italian culture, by the energy of that country, and he, inspired by that, he writes this magnificent symphony. That symphony has, in my opinion, as well, a sort of a Mozartian touch. I always considered Mendelssohn like the most classic of the Romantics. So I think that in this sense, the relationship with Mozart is wonderful. Plus, is a stupendous piece and a challenging piece for the orchestra. So that's why I chose this program. Since I was a very young man, music, although was the dream of my life, I mean, I was naturally born into it, not because of the family, just because by instinct. But I always did need to explore other things, and this has not changed with years. I thought that at some point I would have dropped part of it, but I don't. In fact, I do need that as a sort of balance. It helps me a lot to find a center, so that because music can be so over-involving, that one, in fact, always brings the music within. And so literature as well, because one has to consider that, in my case, since I do conduct a lot of the operatic repertoire, the literary connections within the operatic repertoire are enormous. Like in this case, for instance, Nozze di Figaro, the relationship between Mozart and Da Ponte, but one could say the same for Strauss and Hofmannsthal, or Verdi and Boito, so the late Verdi, I mean. And that always fascinated me, to see, to try to explore that part that we have kind of lost nowadays, the relationship between the poet, the writer, and the musician. Of course, then there is the case of Wagner, who was both a writer and a musician. The same Boito was a composer. He wrote Mephistopheles, for instance, and he was the author of the libretto. So I think that this part, I mean, is as well extremely interesting, just to be able to read the insights of a score, as well starting from the literary part, particularly if you do opera. But not only though. The fact of writing, consideration on a paper, in a white paper, helps us to sort of clean your thoughts. I always thought that this, even in studying scores, so I wrote a lot of things about the score that I've been studying during the years, because the fact of fixing it somehow a thought, an insight, of fixing it written has a different imprimatur, or a different importance. In fact, for instance, myself, I do have, of course, a relationship with technology and with writing in a computer, but if I write, I always end up writing after having written in the paper. It doesn't come natural to me to write from the start on the computer. I have a strange feeling. Maybe it's a matter of generation. Maybe it's my generation. I don't know. But that's how it is. But for me, of course, it's not that Moniuszce is a discovery, but it's the first time, of course, I conduct Moniuszce, and I'm working very deeply in trying to embrace this phenomenal composer. I'm questioning myself, how comes that such a major figure is still internationally not so known? I mean, in terms of repertoire. I think that this could change, because especially, of course, there is a specific part of it that's concerned with the Polish language, which makes it difficult probably to be accepted or understood by an international audience. But the quality of music is definitely of that kind. I mean, it's like it's a really major composer of the 19th century that can stand at the level of the best Italian bel canto composer, but has his own way, his own personality. So, which is in terms of style, to me, is a very international composer. It's not only typically Polish in many sense. That, I think, it's a limit to consider a composer of this status simply connected with sort of a national idea. Of course he is. Of course it's just like for us, in a sense, Verdi. But in fact, the status of Verdi is so big because he was capable of communicating with everyone. So it's kind of universal language. Moniuszce, to me, it's a major figure of this, in this realm of great composers for the theatre. But we know too little still. We know too little.